In early 2020, Epic Games announced that console and mobile players would be getting their own FNCS. While the announcement was met with much excitement, just as many people despised its existence. It was a logistical nightmare, with PC players switching to console, all-out wars breaking out between console and mobile players, and even literal hit lists being created to target prominent PC pros who talk down on console players. This is the downfall of console FNCS and why Epic pulled the plug. Console versus PC is a conflict that is older than probably 90% of you watching this video, and of course, this is no different in Fortnite. Ever since the introduction of forced crossplay in September of 2018, console players have begged Epic for their own separate matchmaking, and in March of 2020, these prayers would be answered in a blog post released about the future of competitive. Epic announced that the Season 2 Duos FNCS would have two separate playlists, one for PC and one for console and mobile players. Both playlists have the same exact prize pool of $70,000 for first place on EU, and $500,000 for the whole tournament. Console players rejoiced as this is above and beyond what they wanted. Not only was it a playlist without PC players, but it was an entire FNCS complete with qualifiers and cash prizing. Prior to this, all console ever got for separate tournaments was the occasional PlayStation Cup and console Winter Royale. Things were looking up for console players, as Epic continued to run separate console FNCS tournaments for the next few seasons. However, all while this was happening, controversy was brewing. Many factors about console FNCS immediately became controversial upon its debut, the first of which was the prize pools. The prize pool split between PC and console FNCS was 50-50. Many PC players immediately took issue with this, as it is not really a secret that console lobbies and tournaments are a lot less competitive in terms of skill. Console players are simply worse overall as a player base, and there is no denying that. Their mechanics are limited by the hardware limitations of consoles. While today a good amount of console players have access to an enjoyable 120 FPS experience, in early 2020, the latest generation of consoles had not even released yet. This meant that every console player was stuck playing on 60 FPS, and there is no denying that 60 FPS on a 60Hz monitor is a lot worse than playing with higher FPS at higher refresh rates. So with this in mind, PC players began to cite how it was absurd that console players who were objectively worse at the game got to earn the same amount of prize money as someone on PC, while a PC player would have to trudge through a grand finals lobby with the likes of Tayson, Aqua, and Benji Fishy. Most console lobbies usually just consisted of a bunch of no-name players with little competitive experience. In response to this, console players began to say how the majority of the game's player base were console players, therefore they contributed much more to Epic's profits than PC players. While there was no hard data to support this, there is no doubt that they are correct. Casual players, most of which are on console, are a lot more likely to spend money on Fortnite than your average quote-unquote PC sweat. Competitive PC players just don't care about skins. The vast majority of them just wear the white superhero and call it a day. Console players figured that because they contributed so much to the revenue generated by Epic, they deserved a fair share of the prize pool. While the grievances were understandable, that would be like saying gold players deserve an FNCS because they buy the most skins. It makes no sense. And according to player number data, PC always made up 70% or more of the FNCS player base. So despite console players undeniably contributing a large amount to Epic's revenue, most of them didn't even care enough to play FNCS anyway. So not only was half of the FNCS prize pool going to lesser skilled players, but those lesser skilled players only made up just over 1/3 of the total FNCS player base. Fortnite Competitive is not a charity. The money being given to console players is being directly taken out of the existing prize pool and not added in. So understandably, every PC pro was disappointed, especially when winning console FNCS on EU literally gave you more money than winning PC FNCS on NA East. At some point in the middle of all of this though, some PC players had a realization. If all of these console players were so much worse, what was stopping them from just hopping on a PS4 to dumpster them and bag out on the equivalent prize pool for much less effort? And this is exactly where the next controversy came in. A lot of controller players on PC realized that they could just hop back on the console they used to play on and still dominate. And when looking at the Grand Finals leaderboards for console FNCS in all regions, a lot of the winners were PC pros. The winners of the Chapter 2 Season 4 NA East console FNCS were Nut, Max, and Assault, all PC pros who switched back to console, along with many other names in the top 10 being PC pros such as Innocence, Benny, TK, and Wiggs. On OCE, Brezzo and Culture also switched from PC to console and won the console FNCS in that region. There were of course many more instances of this too, so not only was console taking a disproportionate amount of the PC prize pool, but some of the people taking that disproportionate prize pool weren't even console players. They were just controller pros who decided to fire up their PS4 once again for an easy win. But PC players switching to console wasn't even the only controversy, as infighting between console and mobile players would begin to take place. But before that, subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying so far. One key detail that isn't often discussed about quote-unquote console FNCS is that it wasn't just console players. Players on mobile devices also got lumped into the same category as console players, and this caused huge controversy among the console community. Because mobile Fortnite was heavily optimized to run smoothly, mobile players were actually at an advantage over console players, and in January of 2020, Epic Games updated mobile Fortnite to support 120 FPS on the iPad Pro. So along with 120 FPS, mobile Fortnite also had a higher FOV and better aim assist. Seeing this, players quickly figured out that you could hook up a controller to the iPad and play with a controller while on mobile. This revelation essentially ruined console FNCS in the eyes of many, with high-ranking console pros banning all mobile players from scrim discords, and come time for the Season 3 solo FNCS, it made sense. 9 out of the 10 players in the top 10 of the EU leaderboard were all playing with a controller on iPad, while the 10th person who wasn't using a controller was also playing on iPad. The whole situation was a disaster. PC players were fed up from having their prize pools stolen by inferior players. Console players were fed up by having to queue with mobile players, along with not having their own separate arena mode playlists to practice. And mobile players were fed up with console players non-stop complaining about their presence in console-only tournaments. At this point, it was all too much for Epic, and with the announcement of the 2021 competitive season, the fate of console FNCS was sealed. In the blog post outlining the details for the 2021 competitive season, Epic made no mention of console FNCS, meaning that it was done for. FNCS would now be shared by all platforms, and the prize pool once again returned to its normal levels. This announcement was of course met with mixed reactions. PC players celebrated, as the prize pool that was rightfully theirs had been returned to them. Console players on the other hand weren't going down without a fight. The Twitter page for the Console King Scrim Discord tweeted out a Fortnite hit list of all the PC pros they hated. It not only consisted of pros who gave console players lots of shit like Calc and Buckley, but it also included those PC players who migrated the console and quote-unquote stole their prize pools, such as CRR and Amplify. While it never really amounted to anything since console players couldn't even qualify to FNCS, it was still a statement of the pure vitriol that came out of this announcement.
I think there's more than
they're
teaming. They're straight teaming.
As for why Epic did it, the reasons are unknown, but many speculate it was due to the release of the new-gen consoles in late 2020. New-gen consoles supported Fortnite at 120 FPS and could be played on a 120Hz monitor, meaning that the hardware limitations of console versus PC had shrunk drastically. In Epic's eyes, funding a separate console FNCS simply wasn't worth it anymore with all the drama it caused. However, just a few months later in May, Epic announced the Console Champions Cup, an FNCS-like tournament specifically for console players with the $250,000 prize pool. The prize pool split made a lot more sense, with the console prize pool only being 8% of the $3 million PC prize pool, but there was just one glaring issue, which was that the tournament was hosted before PC FNCS even started. Without the incentive of a much bigger tournament to keep PC players away, they all yet again flocked the console to get an easy bag, and no surprise, almost every region was won by a team with at least one PC player. EU was won by Andalex, NA East was won by Nut, Jays, and TK, and OCE was yet again won by Brezzo and Culture. And because all subsequent console champion series were always hosted at times when PC tournaments weren't on, this continued. In Chapter 4 Season 4, the entire top 5 on the EU was all made up of PC pros. Since then, not a single console FNCS or Champions Cup has been hosted. The only console exclusive tournaments that have been hosted since late 2023 are Platform Cash Cups and PlayStation Cups, both of which are on sporadic schedules. As of now, console competitive is practically dead. However, it doesn't have to be this way. In the days following the removal of console FNCS, many console players said that the prize pool was completely irrelevant to them. Simply having a playlist where they can test their skills against other console players was enough for them. The solution to this issue is simple: host some kind of console FNCS equivalent every season, but with very little or even no prize pool at all. All console players want is a way to play in their own tournaments without PC players, and that is not much of an ask for Epic to do. The goal of console competitive should be to simply allow console players to make enough money to upgrade to PC, and contrary to popular belief, it really doesn't cost that much to get started on PC. I put together this parts list for a $750 PC that will perform great for Fortnite in endgames. A 144Hz monitor will usually set you back around $150, and add in a budget keyboard and mouse and you can get a full-on PC setup for around $1,000. And if you don't mind hunting for used parts, you can get this down a lot cheaper. Just note that all these prices are American prices. They will likely be higher if you aren't in the US, Canada, or the UK. So hopefully, Epic brings back seasonal console tournaments, but only time will tell. Subscribe and check out my second channel linked below or the other videos on your screen now.